Hello and welcome to our blog. I am Jim Cuervo, Senior Trainer and Tech Support here at Digital Drafting Systems. In today's installment of our blog, we will be looking at using Enscape as our render engine, and believe it or not, it will also be used as our 3D model staging agent. For this, we will be using some Enscape 3D models. We will also add some light emitters to some 3D Enscape models of lighting fixtures in order to illuminate our scene correctly. We will be looking at Enscape Materials also and find out how to use them inside Revit. And last but not least, we will take an abbreviated look at the controls in the Enscape render window for improvements of our render. As we can see, we have a very simple building design that we will be using for this blog. Let's start by seeing how we can add some Enscape materials by first looking for a couple of materials for the walls in Enscape using the Enscape Material browser dialog box. So we'll go to the Enscape Material library here in the Enscape tab. And we have our list of materials here as our in our group by types. So let's go and take a look at some wood material. And the one that we're looking for is a plank material, wood 19 planks. Now we'll be doing something with this a little bit later on that will make it look like wood 18, but we won't be coming back to load this, okay? That's one, so let's go ahead and select it. And the way to load it into Revit would be to, again, go ahead and import selection, and it's done. The other material that we're going to be looking for is a wavy material, so we'll go to go over here to plasters, and in plasters we have this plaster 08 wavy. So we select it, and just like we did before, we'll go ahead and import selection. Once all of that's done, okay, we can close this out and select the ones that we want. In this case, we've already have defined some walls that will be taking these materials on, such as if we select this item here, this particular wall, okay, what we do is then go ahead into the edit types. We have the waves that will take the wave material, okay, and then we'll go here to structure. And the material item, we'll just change it like we would normally. So we'll go ahead and say waves here for the, oops, misspelled it. Okay, or plaster, which is, oops, too much underspelling, overspelling. Here it is. And we're looking for this wavy one here, okay? We'll say okay to that. And then we'll say okay again. So we'll apply it then and say okay. So now all of our walls that are going to have the wavy material are in this very light yellow, as you can see right here. It's actually these two walls right here coming all the way across and wrapping around this balcony, and at the base of this very same balcony as a support side. Great. Then now we'll go ahead and apply the wood material planks to the wall, the door here. Okay, so we'll go over to the single frame, no frame here. We'll go to edit types, and here in the materials, door material, okay, we'll open that up, and in this case we will look for wood planks, right, like this. And here's our wood plank. And we'll say okay to that. But before, why don't we change it a little bit? Let's go ahead and come over here and adjust it. Let's give it a little bit of a tint. Okay, and let's not make it a white tint. Let's make it a little bit darker, a little richer in color here. Maybe we'll go over to a little bit of a brown here. Not too dark. Okay. And we'll say okay to that. And okay again. And apply and okay. And now that material has been applied to this particular door. Now we need the same material, but rather than using it in a vertical, we're going to use it as a horizontal at this wall. And this wall's here, and these little walls right here, okay? So what we'll do is then we'll go back to the wall here and select the wall. This has already been defined as the wood with grooves. We'll say edit type. Okay, then we'll come over here to the edit type again and select here. Okay, open this up, and we have already this one selected with the wood 19 that we used in the door before. So what we'll do is we'll first of all we'll come in here, select it, open this up, and duplicate selected material. Okay, we'll go ahead and rename this. Take the quotations marks off, and we'll put here horizontal planks. Okay, once we do that, we will come over here to the actual material itself. Okay, before we do that, we need to make it individual. So, because if I start changing this material, it will change the original. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make it independent here by duplicating the assets. Okay, so that will automatically now make it independent. So what we'll do is we'll select it again, come back to the material itself in the rotation section. Rather than go looking for the rotation here, we know that it's going to be a 90-degree rotation, so we'll just type in 90, hit the enter key, and done. And once we do that, we'll say apply, and OK, and OK again. And now we see that we have the horizontals and the verticals both from the same material. We will now continue to import some Enscape 3D model, vegetation, and others from the Enscape model library. The Enscape model library can be found once again in the Enscape tab, Asset Library. And then it'll go ahead and load it. Now, what I did do was I actually went ahead and I made all of these models offline. Otherwise, I would be reloading them every time I want to come in here. So let's go ahead and start by moving over here to vegetation, okay? And in vegetation, let's go ahead and look for a nice sculpted tree that we have here. So we hear down here, it's pretty nice. And we will look for it right here, this one right here, the evergreen tree 017. Okay, and we'll just place it at this moment, we'll just place it here. Okay, now you'll notice that it disappeared. It seems like it's not there. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the escape key here for a second, and let's close this out for a second once again, and let's move ourselves to 3D, and there it is. You will notice, I'm going to have to save here, but we'll cancel for now. And you will notice that even though I placed it here, for some reason it kind of moves it, so we can actually select it here and move it over here. You will also notice that it's very low into the concrete here. Okay, so what we can actually do to actually fix this is go ahead and say pick new host. Right now the host is going to be whatever it chose. I'm going to say no, the new host is actually here. And so what it does, it raises it to the elevation 0 top surface of the object that we actually selected as the host. Let's go ahead and add something else to actually receive this tree right here by going into, once again, Enscape tab, the Assets Library. And in this time, I'm going to go ahead into the Street Props. And in the Street Props, I have this little manhole cover that I can use that is smaller than the ones that actually come for the tree planting, such as this one. This is too big for where I want to use, so I'm going to use this one here. It's kind of like a metal cover. We've all seen them in the sidewalks. So I'll select this item, and we'll go ahead and place it right here also. Once again, it seems like it's not there, but in truth it is. Let's go ahead and escape right here for a second and close this out once again. And let's come over here to level 1, and you'll notice where it is. It's right in, it's actually not even in there. So let's go to site plan, and there it is, right there. Okay, so we'll actually put it in here, okay, and we'll pick its new host, which is going to be this one right there. When we switch back to our 3D view, we will notice that it's now placed exactly where we want it. So it's just a matter of going back to level 1 now, because we can then take this over and move it towards here. Obviously we can't see it, so the best place to center them, because you can't actually align them center to center, so it's just going ahead and just moving it and then bringing it back, and it will go ahead and kind of lock itself into a center point there. Let's go back to the 3D view to see what that looks like. And at this point it's looking Really nice. Let's go ahead and add a person here. We'll go back again to the Enscape, and in Enscape we'll go to the asset library once again, and we'll go to people. I have the this little young lady called ES, or that's right, it's this one right here, SME003. I'm going to use her. I'm going to place her right about here. Once again, we have the same problem that we had before. Let's go ahead and close this out for a second and make sure that we select her and that she is at the proper level by picking its new host, which is once again this very same little slab that we've got there. And now she is looking pretty darn great in the position that we want her in. Now, as a last item for these 3D models, we'll go ahead and add a nice little car here by going to the Enscape library of 3D models. Once again, selecting the vehicles only so we can go ahead and filter everything out that we're not looking for. And we have a really nice little red Fiat in here that I kind of like. This is this one right here. And then we'll just go ahead and place it here. I can hit the space bar, okay, this way to turn it around. It's a little hard to spin these things out when you have placed them or after you have placed them. So what I highly advise you to do is actually to go ahead and space bar it to rotate it into position the way you want it before you actually now click for placement. Once again, what do we have? Let's close this out. The problem with the not being in the proper level. So we'll say select it, pick new host once again. This is my host. And we'll move over to our level site plan here so we can zoom out a little bit and move our car into position right about there. Very well. With that, let's go back to the 3D and let's take a look at this in this fashion. This is starting to look rather nice. Now it is time to import some light emitters into the Revit, but in order to do that, we must first turn on light emitters in the Revit viewport. Following this, we will, in this case, swap out an existing Enscape light fixture for one with a light emitter. The light fixture that we will be swapping out would be these right here. But first, let's go ahead and select nothing by going to modify here, making sure that we have the properties of the viewport available to us. We'll go to the visibility graphics dialog box, look for lights right here, the lighting fixtures. You will see that there's an plus sign here, and you'll see that there is the light source, or what I call light emitters, right here. So we'll go ahead and check that mark on and apply and say OK to that. Now, the yellow items that are now visible are actually the light emitters that we're talking about, or the light sources, okay? You will notice that I do have some Revit pieces in here, some of these right here. You'll notice that this is a light distribution here, or a web, and this one is just a light emitter, and these are basically wall washes that I've used for this area. But you'll notice that these here don't have anything on them. There are no light emitters in these ones right here. Okay, so what I will do is actually I'm going to swap it out with a different one. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the one that we're going to be using by going to File. We'll say in Open a Family. The family is going to be in a very specific place where I've actually put some of these right there. And the one we're looking for is this one right here. Okay, we'll go ahead and open one. Open it so we can see it. What I've done to this is I've actually brought in a light source, okay, and I aligned it here slightly forward of it. Let's take a look exactly where it is. You'll see a slightly forward, not in smack in the center. I just want it a little bit forward so it illuminates better. Okay, if I place it in here, I might not have openings for the light to shine through, so I just place it just slightly outside for it to go ahead and distribute the light better. That being said, I can then save it and load it into my project, okay, and override the existing one, which happen to be these right here. Okay, so now that these have their emitters, I can go back to 3D and see that we've now learned a couple of things. First of all, that some of my Enscape items do not come with emitters, so we have to replace them or add that to them, because the truth is that it's very difficult to align them within Revit. So it's better or rather within the Revit project. So it's actually better to actually open up the Enscape family for Revit and then place it in there with it, and then you don't have to start wrestling about the placement, whether it's too high, too low, whatever it is. You've already done that. It's been completely finished. Once we go in and replace it, it overrides all of them, and now we have all of them with the proper lights that we want. Very well, let's move forward. Let us now open a more complete Revit Enscape model and open our Enscape render window. And as stated, here we have a more completed Revit model. We'll notice that there's a couple of things that need to be adjusted. For example, I see this light, this pattern lantern here that is kind of in the wrong place. If you can see, it's floating. You must be really careful about that. Rather than selecting it and then picking a new host this way, in order to bring it down the way I want to, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. I really don't need that one. I've got some over here also with their light fixtures already placed there. So let's go ahead and open up then our Enscape render window. You'll notice that I also have a couple of different views with cameras here. So I have my 3D view and my 3D camera views. So what I do is I hit the Enscape tab here and I move over to the active document and open up, and you'll see I have all of them available here, all of these items in the 3D views. And I'll select the one that I want to start with, which is the 3D view number 2 here. Okay, once I've selected that, I can hit the Start Revit Window Render. Not Revit, but actually Enscape Render Window, in which case it opens up this little dialog box here, which is actually now passing everything over, and then we have this. Now that we have Enscape Render Window open, we can appreciate the model in a very realistic way. Let's take a look at some of these controls in the Enscape Render Window. The Enscape Render Window controls can be found right up here. Okay, so in this section we have a little mini map that you can actually use to navigate with. I don't like to use it too much because it kind of messes up my placement. So I'll go ahead and close it out by hitting this button again. I can go ahead and show the safe frame of the window in this way. It actually brings it down a little bit closer. And I also notice that it's a little high. I can actually change the placement of my camera by bringing it down a little bit this way. Okay, and maybe coming in a little closer like that. Maybe rotating it using my buttons on the mouse to navigate, very much the same way that you would do in items such as Revit, by just going ahead and right button, left button, and wheel mouse. Great, this is looking very nice with the position of the camera. Excellent. Then let's have a look at some of the other controls that we have here. In this section, we can actually switch from a perspective to a 2-point or orthographic mode. Here we can switch between a walk mode or a fly mode. We are in the fly mode. If you had this connected, yes, to the Oculus Rift or any type of 3D goggles, that would be here. Okay. Then you also have some controls here in the settings, render window settings, okay, which we're not going to look at because what we want to really do is see how we can enhance this a little bit better. And for that, it's going to be the one that I skipped, this little button that I skipped right here. This opens up a dialog box. Let's move it over to the side slightly here, which allows us to do a couple of things. It allows us to control the exposure of the scene in this fashion. I like to keep it somewhere around 50%. Okay. I can also change the field of view. I have it set to a 90 degrees, but I can actually switch it to any type of view that I want. Basically, this becomes sort of like trucking the camera in and out. Okay, and I like it right about there. Let's make sure that we've got the carport viewed. Great, excellent. Great. Here we have the ability to change the render quality, but it's the render quality for the view, because you do have an export render quality control that we'll see in a few minutes. In this case, I can actually degrade it a little bit because maybe my video card is just not strong enough to go ahead and handle it. So I can actually move it to whatever I want to actually set it to. Let's go ahead and put it down to high. Ultra is a little bit too high, and high still gives me a really nice look. I will change it though for the final render. If I come over here to the image, for example, I have the ability to control the highlights and shadows, the saturation and color temperatures, just like you would in Photoshop, for example. You can add motion blur or completely remove it. In this case, let's go ahead and remove it altogether. If I have lens flares, then a direct light source shining into my camera lens, then I could have some flares or some blooms. And then we can do some vignetting just to focus in a little bit on some of our little pieces that we want people to actually look a little bit more closely to. Okay, I particularly don't like too much vignetting, but I do like it just slightly. Okay, and then you have your chromatic aberrations, which I actually leave at 100%. It's actually talking about some little like hot spots that appear for some reason. So this actually is going to go ahead and diminish it as much as possible. Following that, we'll go over here to the atmospheres, and you'll find a whole bunch of really good controls that are going to help us in something that we're going to do in a few minutes, which is kind of like a surprise. Okay, in the fog intensity, if I have fog, I can go ahead and increase the fog. I can increase the fog height, so it just can be shallow fog or deep fog. In other words, to here or to all the way up. Okay, you have the ability to control the sun brightness, which I leave it at 110. It's more or less really good. The night sky brightness, I have it at 207 because I want to see clouds up there if I'm at night. Okay, the artificial light brightness is talking about the light emitters that we actually added to the light fixture earlier, and that come with most, and if not all, of the Revit light fixture models. Okay. And we also have the ambient brightness, which I have set at 82. You can switch that back and forth, okay, and you can see that it actually changes the brightness of the scene, okay. That brightness I like to set it somewhere around 80%. I can do it with the slider, or I can do it numerically. Okay, that's pretty good. I have wind intensity. I'm not too crazy about too much wind, so let's go ahead and put it down to about 15%. Okay, and I can change the wind direction if I so choose. Okay, now with all of that, we can go over to the skies, and we can define the rotation of the sky in here. Okay, which I'm going to just leave it here. Sorry, and the sky really is talking about this dome that is placed around my design, that will give me the skies and the backgrounds. And this is talking about all of that. In this case, for example, my background is forest. But I do have something that I like to use much more often. I do like to use the backgrounds like forest and all that, but when you actually look at these things in the distance, they kind of lose the realism. So what I tend to do is I try to kind of mask it a little bit using a lot of Enscape foliage around it, so I don't really get to see too much of the background, but I get to see a lot of the sky, which is the one that I really want to see more than anything in this case. Following that, we can increase the cloud densities and varieties. We can add serious amount to the clouds, or rather increase the series of the amount of the clouds. Okay, that can add constraint trails, longitude and latitude changes here if I want to, and then we have the outputs. Okay, at this time, the output is selected to Full HD, which is the 920 1080. I believe that would be 4K. I'm not sure, but I think it is. Okay, and all the other controls that we have here. With that, we have now seen how we can actually even increase further our render in Enscape. Now let's take a look at the controls here on the left side. We have our home button, which is this one right here, following which we have our collaboration annotation and our BIM. If we select the BIM mode here, it actually lists all of the geometry in here, and you can actually select them, and as you can see, it also highlights them in the viewport. Then we have the view management, which allows us to select which view we're going to be using by clicking on it and switching views. And we do have an asset library identical to the one that we have in Revit, but the difference is that in Revit I downloaded it to the local computer, and so I don't have to wait for that reload item. I think it's actually a little bit easier. Following that, also, when you actually place them within the Enscape render engine, you have to place them and then update every time. It's a little bit too much for me. I'd rather do it in Revit and then just go ahead and launch my render window as we did in this demonstration. Just go close this out. Then I'm going to skip this one for a second, and let's take a look at the screenshot. I can actually export the screenshot as it is. Okay, I can batch render a whole bunch of views if I so also wish from here, and I can go ahead and export a 360 panorama. We have the mono panorama and the stereo panorama. This is going to be 3D, and this was just standard. In this one right here, we have the ability to export, okay, to a standalone or a web standalone. Basically, it's just creating a 3D model in the web, completely rendered, and all of the materials and lights have been, for the sake of a better word, baked into my geometry within the render that we did. Now we'll take a look at the item that I really wanted to show you on this side, which is the video editor. If I select the video editor, I have a few controls here. Let's go ahead and first of all set up our time render here by clicking in this section here and picking on one of these little items. This little arrow, little diamond, or let's call them arrow heads right here, are actually keyframes. So if I select that keyframe, what happens is it allows me to change the time of day. If I could go ahead in here and select the time of day, and I'm going to use time of day at 12 p.m. for the very first keyframe. We'll follow then that by going ahead over here to the end rather than the beginning. I'm going to the end here and selecting the plus sign, which adds another keyframe, but at the end of the animation, which I then go ahead and select. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and change my duration here to 6 seconds. You don't need more than that. Okay, so my duration is 6 seconds, and I select my keyframe on the end of the animation, and I say that the time of day here is going to switch from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Look at that. It's actually a night scene. Now that that is all done, I can then select outside here and come to the right side right here and go to the export button, in which case I'm going to switch the resolution. Remember I told you I was going to switch the resolution at the end of render, so I'm going to go from full high definition to ultra high definition, which is like, I'm thinking that's maybe 4K, maybe even 6 or 8K. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. Okay, the compression quality is maximum, and the frames per second are 30 frames per second. When I hit the export button, as you can see, I've already rendered a few. We're going to see them in a couple of moments. Okay, and we can then go ahead and save it, and once we do that, it will start rendering out. Rather than going through the whole process of rendering out, why don't we just go ahead and call out one of the previously rendered sections. Now we have the MP4 now showing in our screen. Let's hit the play button and see what we got from this. Looks pretty darn impressive as far as I'm concerned. And with that, we have seen how to go ahead and create our model in Revit, which was not really part of this, but we start with that. Then we went ahead and made some adjustments to our materials using some Enscape Materials. Then we went ahead and imported some Enscape geometry, and we saw some of the things that we have to be paying attention to, such as making sure they're in the proper plane that we want them to, so they don't look like they're sunken or swallowed by the earth. We've then come and seen how we can actually improve our render from the standard or basic render that it gives us using the controls for render in the Enscape render window. And then we saw how we can actually create a very simple, short shadow study or light study of our model using Enscape and producing a very wonderful little render. With that, this has been Jim Cuervo saying thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please stay safe and healthy. Till the next one, James Cuervo for Digital Drafting Systems. Thank you so much.